The morning Harlan Dupree walked into the Whitmore County zoning office. He was wearing the same jacket he'd worn to his daughter's graduation 3 years before. Charcoal gray, a little loose at the shoulders now. He had a folder under his arm, and a thermos of coffee he'd made at 4 in the morning. Nobody looked up when he walked in. Mattered. That part mattered. Not because it was unusual. Because it wasn't. If you've ever watched someone be made invisible in real time, not through cruelty exactly, but through something quieter and in some ways worse, then you already know what that office felt like at 7:58 on a Tuesday morning in September. 3 clerks behind the counter, one on the phone, one sorting papers, one staring at a 61-year-old black man standing at the counter with a folder and a thermos, waiting. He waited 4 minutes before anyone acknowledged him. He counted. Harlan was the kind of man who counted things. Acres, board feet, interest rates, minutes. The clerk who finally came over, a younger man named Todd Pruitt, name tag slightly crooked, coffee stain on his left cuff, looked at the folder before he looked at Harlan. Help you? Not good morning. Not sir. Help you. The way you'd say it to someone you'd already decided wasn't going to have what they needed. Harlan set the folder on the counter and opened it. I'm here about the commercial zoning application for the Dupree parcel, 1,400 acres on Route 9 South. Filed 6 weeks ago. Pruitt barely glanced at the papers. That one's still under review. It's been under review for 6 weeks. The standard processing window is 3. We're backed up. I understand that. I'd like to speak with whoever is managing the application. Pruitt picked up a pen and clicked it twice. That'd be Director Aldrich. He's not available. When will he be available? Hard to say. Harlan looked at him for a moment. Just looked. He had a way of doing that. Not aggressive, not pleading, just steady. That made people either meet his eyes or look away. Pruitt looked at the pen. I'll leave my number, Harlan said. Again, he'd left it 4 times before. He knew Pruitt knew that. He put a business card on top of the folder anyway, picked up his thermos, and walked back out into the September air. His truck was a 2019 Ford F-250, dark green, mud on the running boards from the lower fields. He sat in it for a minute before he started the engine. He didn't call anyone. He didn't say anything out loud. He just sat there with both hands on the wheel, looking at the county building's glass doors, and then he started the truck and drove back out to Route 9. Now, before we go any further, because there's a lot to this story, and it matters that you understand who Harlan Dupree actually was before this county spent 18 months pretending he wasn't worth their time. Let's back up. If you're new here, welcome to Heritage Tales. We tell real stories about real people. If this is the kind of story that moves you, hit that subscribe button, because we have more coming every week. And if you already know where this one is going, stay anyway. The details are the whole point. Harlan Dupree was born in 1963 in a farmhouse that no longer very much does. His grandfather, a man named August Dupree, had purchased 60 acres of that land in 1947, which in rural Whitmore County at that time was not a small thing for a black family to do. It required a lawyer. It required cash. It required a particular kind of stubbornness that doesn't have a clean name in English, but that families like the Duprees understood as something closer to a religion. August farmed tobacco. His son, Harlan's father, Wesley, expanded into soybeans and cattle. By the time Harlan came back from his 2 years at Georgia State and 4 more doing agricultural management consulting in South Carolina, the Dupree land had grown to just under 300 acres. Harlan's spent the next 3 decades turning that into 1,400. He didn't do it with investors or venture capital or anyone else's money. He did it the way his grandfather had done it, deed by deed, acre by acre, through drought years and commodity crashes and 2 divorces and 1 back surgery that kept him out of the fields for 8 months and nearly broke him in ways that had nothing to do with money. By the time he was 60, the Dupree operation ran cattle, hay, and a small but profitable operation supplying heritage grain to 4 regional restaurants and 1 national food brand whose name you would recognize. He employed 11 people full-time. He owned his equipment outright. He had no debt. He also had a plan. The plan The one that required the zoning application. The one that required dealing with Todd Pruitt and Director Philip Aldrich and the Whitmore County Planning Department. Was to convert a portion of the Route 9 acreage into a working agricultural education center. Cabins, a demonstration farm, weekend programming for school groups and families. A commercial kitchen for the grain operation. Nothing flashy. The kind of thing that brought money into a county quietly and kept coming back. Harlan had spent 2 years developing the proposal. He had an architect. He had a business plan. He had letters of support from 3 county commissioners, a state senator's office, and the Regional Agricultural Extension Program. What he did not have, apparently, was the right last name. Director Philip Aldrich had run the Whitmore County Planning and Zoning Department for 11 years. He was the kind of administrator who was never technically wrong about anything, because he never technically committed to anything. His specialty was delay, review periods, requests for additional documentation, concerns that needed to be assessed further. He had a particular talent for making bureaucratic obstruction sound like due diligence, and he had been using that talent, Harlan would later learn, in a very targeted way. The application had been flagged on week 2, not publicly, not formally, a notation in an internal routing file. Harlan would eventually see this notation, though not for many months, that read in Aldrich's handwriting, verify ownership chain. Parcel history unclear. The ownership chain was not unclear. The Dupree land had clear title going back to 1947. All of it recorded and indexed and available to anyone who cared to look. Aldrich had not looked. Or rather, and this is the part that mattered, he had looked, found exactly what he expected to find, and written unclear anyway. Meanwhile, 3 other commercial zoning applications filed in the same month as Harlan's had been processed. 1 in 4 weeks, 1 in 3, 1 in 5. All 3 applicants were white. None of them had 1,400 acres or a national food brand client, or a letter from a state senator's office. Harlan didn't know any of this yet when he drove back to Route 9 that September morning. He knew what he could see. 6 weeks, no movement, no call back, no explanation. His daughter Renata knew more. Had a law degree from Howard, and a manner of speaking that could make a grown man feel like he needed to review his life choices. She had been monitoring the application from Atlanta, and she had already made 2 calls to the county offices that had been politely, thoroughly ignored. When Harlan got back to the farm that afternoon, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a yellow legal pad next to it. "Sit down, Daddy. I just got here. Sit down." He sat. She turned the laptop toward him. She had pulled the county's public zoning records. She had the 3 comparison applications laid out side by side: processing time, acreage, complexity, approval status. She had a highlighted copy of the county's own stated processing guidelines. She had a timeline. Harlan looked at it for a long time without saying anything. "You knew," she said, "not an accusation. And I suspected," he said. "That's not the same as having it on paper." "No," he said. "It's not." She pushed the legal pad toward him. She'd already been taking notes. "I want to file a formal complaint with the state, Office of Civil Rights and Opportunity. Before we do that, I want 3 more weeks of documented contact attempts. Every call, every visit, every non-response. Timestamps." Harlan looked at the legal pad. His daughter's handwriting was nothing like his. His was square and deliberate. Hers, fast and angular, like she was always writing against a deadline. "Renata, I know you want to handle it quiet. I've been handling it quiet for 61 years. She looked at him, and he picked up the legal pad. 3 weeks, he said. What followed was the kind of thing that is boring to live through, and significant only in retrospect. Harlan called the office 14 times over the next 3 weeks. He documented each call, time, clerk spoken to, substance of response, follow-up promised. He visited 2 certified letters to Aldrich directly, requiring signature confirmation. Both were signed for, neither was responded to. Jurictha, Renata from Atlanta, was doing something different. She was not being loud about it. She was not posting. She was not threatening. She was making calls of her own. To people she had worked with, people who owed her professional courtesies, people who had particular knowledge of how Whitmore County conducted its business. One of those calls was to a woman named Beverly Harmon, a senior investigator at the state's Office of Civil Rights and Opportunity, who Renata had met at a conference in 2019 and stayed in occasional contact with since. Another was to a man named Clifton Osee, a partner at an Atlanta firm that handled civil rights litigation and had, in the past 4 years, won 3 settlements against municipal bodies in Georgia, totaling just under $11 million. A third call, the one that would matter most, though no one knew it yet, was to her former professor at Howard, a man named Dr. Warren Aldgate, who had retired from teaching and now served on the board of a foundation that most people in Whitmore County had never heard of. Renata didn't tell her father about all of how these calls, not because she was keeping secrets, but because she had learned, through watching him her whole life, that Harlan Dupree did not move until he was ready, and he was not ready yet. The letter from the county came on a Thursday, in the 4th week of October. Harlan recognized the return address before he opened it. He made himself finish his coffee first. The letter, signed by Philip Aldrich, informed Harlan that his application had been denied. The stated reason: insufficient documentation of environmental impact assessment as required under County Ordinance 14C, Section 7. Section 7 of Ordinance 14, development within 500 feet of a designated wetland. The nearest designated wetland to the Dupree parcel was 2.3 miles away. Harlan read the letter twice. He folded it. He put it back in the envelope. He called Renata. She picked up on the first ring, which meant she'd been waiting. They denied it, he said. A pause. On what grounds? He told her. Another pause, shorter this time. Okay, she said. And her voice had gone to a place he recognized. Not loud, not heated, just very, very focused, the way it had sounded when she was 9 years old, and someone had told her she couldn't be in the advanced reading group, and she had gone home and read the entire book they were discussing in one weekend, and come back Monday, ready to talk about all of it. Okay, she said again. I'm going to need you to scan that letter and send it to me in the next 10 minutes. Already walking to the scanner. Good, and Daddy, don't call the county. Don't call anyone there. Not yet. I know. I mean it, Renata. I know. What happened next happened in stages, and the county didn't see any of it coming, because they had made a mistake that powerful people in small offices sometimes make. They had decided that Harlan Dupree was alone. He was not alone. Clifton Osee filed a formal complaint with the state's Civil Rights Office within 72 hours of receiving the denial letter. The complaint cited the application timeline, the comparison cases, the wetlands claim, and the documented failure to respond to contact. It was 51 pages long. It had 17 exhibits. Beverly Harmon at the state office assigned the case to herself. Dr. Warren Aldgate made a call to a colleague on the State Agricultural Commission. That call led to a request, quiet, official, unremarkable in appearance, for a review of Whitmore County's zoning approval patterns over the previous 5 years. And Renata Dupree drove up from Atlanta on a Friday afternoon, let herself into the farmhouse with her key, put 2 bags of groceries on the counter, and started making dinner. Harlan came in from the lower fields at 6. He stopped in the kitchen doorway when he smelled the food. You didn't have to come, he said. I know I didn't. He washed his hands at the sink. You talked to Osee? Yesterday. And we're going to be fine, Daddy. But it's going to take a minute. He dried his hands and sat down at the table. How long a minute? She put a plate in front of him. Eat first. Here's what a minute turned out to mean. The state civil rights investigation took 11 weeks. At week 4, Beverly Harmon's office requested records from the county. All zoning applications, all correspondence, all internal routing files for the previous 3 years. The county complied, because they had to. Among those records was Philip Aldrich's notation from week 2 of the Dupree chain. Verify ownership chain. Parcel history unclear. Beverly Harmon cross-referenced that notation with the 3 comparison applications approved in the same period. None of them had similar notations. She pulled 2 more comparison cases from the prior year. No notations. She found 14 applications over 5 years. 12 had been approved within the standard 3-week window. 2 had not. Both of the delayed and denied applications had been filed by black property owners. Aldrich didn't know this yet. Aldrich was still, as of December, under the impression that this was a local dispute that would stay local. He was wrong about that on a Thursday morning in January, when a car he didn't recognize pulled into the county building parking lot. A black Suburban, government plates, and two people he'd never seen before walked through the front doors and asked to speak with the director. He met them in the conference room off his office. Beverly Harmon, and a man from the state attorney general's office whose name was not important to remember, because the name on the business card he handed Aldrich told Aldrich everything he needed to know about how serious this had become. Harlan wasn't there for that meeting. He was at the farm, doing what he did every January, reviewing the year's accounts, looking at seed prices, planning the spring. His phone rang at 11:15. It was Renata. "It's happening," she said. "I know." "You don't know all of it yet." He waited. "Dr. Aldgate's foundation," she said. "They've been looking at the educational center proposal. The whole thing, the demonstration farm, the kitchen, the programming. They want to fund the build-out. Full funding, Daddy, not a grant. A partnership." The line was quiet for a moment. "How much?" she told him. He was quiet again. Outside the window of his office, a small room off the barn he'd converted 15 years ago, shelves full of binders, a desk that had been his father's. The January fields were brown and flat and going all the way to the tree line, and beyond that the road, and beyond that more land, all of it his. "Renata," he said. "I know, your grandfather would have." He stopped. Started again. "August would have liked this. He would have said you took too long," she said. And he laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Philip Aldrich resigned from the directorship in February. The county did not make a public statement about the circumstances. They rarely do. What the county did do, because Beverly Harmon's office required it as part of the resolution agreement, was process the Dupree application under standard review. It took 9 business days. The approval came in writing, signed by the interim director, with a letter of apology that was formal and brief and said exactly what letters like that always say and nothing more. Harlan framed the approval, not the apology, just the approval. The groundbreaking for the Dupree Agricultural Heritage Center happened on a Saturday in late April. It was a warm day, clouds moving fast, the kind of spring day in rural Georgia that makes you understand why people stay. There were about 40 people there. Renata, his sister Claudette, and her husband, driving up from Macon. 11 employees, most of whom had been there for years. A reporter from the regional paper. Beverly Harmon, who came on her own time. Clifton Ossie and 2 people from his firm. Dr. Aldgate, who was older than Harlan had expected and had a firm handshake and said very little but stayed for the whole thing. A photographer from an agriculture journal was there too, because the story had made it into the trade press, not loudly, not in a way that named every name, but enough. Enough to be a record, enough to matter. Harlan stood at the edge of what would become the main building and looked out at the land. 1,400 acres. Every deed earned, every acre documented. Ownership chain perfectly clear. Todd Pruitt had taken a job in a neighboring county. Whether he knew about any of this, whether it reached him, whether it changed anything in him, that part of the story belongs to him, not to Harlan. Harlan picked up the shovel. His daughter stood next to him, his employees behind him. The April light came through the clouds in long flat panels and lay across the fields like something deliberate. He turned the first shovel of earth. Nobody made a speech. He hadn't wanted one. There was just the sound of the dirt, and then people started to clap. And somewhere near the back, someone said, "That's right," quietly. The way you say something when you've been waiting a long time to say it. Some things don't need to be announced, they just need to happen. And then they need to last. The Dupree Agricultural Heritage Center is scheduled to open its doors to its first school group in the fall. The reservation list is already full through December. August Dupree bought 60 acres in 1947 because he believed the land would outlast everything that was wrong with the world around it. He was right. He just didn't know yet exactly how right.